Welcome, dear viewers. Thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers. It means a lot. Become a member of Dr. Void family at just 99 cents per month and get exclusive episodes every week. They say tragedy comes in threes, but for me it was just one. One moment that shattered everything. My brother Jake died in a freak accident 2 years ago while flying his Cessna 172 over the Nevada desert. The official report claimed he'd veered into restricted airspace and suffered catastrophic mechanical failure before plummeting into the sand. I didn't buy it. Jake was meticulous about maintenance and navigation. He'd been flying that route for years, collecting aerial footage for his YouTube channel about American landscapes. The military refused to release his personal effects or what was left of the aircraft. They cited national security concerns and handed us an empty coffin to bury. When I pushed back, demanding answers, a stone-faced Air Force major showed up at my door with a non-disclosure agreement and a thinly veiled threat about obstruction of classified military operations. I signed their fucking paper. What choice did I have? For 2 years, I let grief hollow me out. I lost my job as an aerospace engineer at Boeing, spent most days nursing a bottle, and watched Jake's YouTube videos on repeat, looking for something, anything. A clue in his final uploads that might explain what really happened. And then yesterday, the email arrived. From jcarpenter85 at protonmail.com. Subject, your brother. I know what happened to Jake. They're lying to you. If you want the truth, apply for the night security position at Groom Lake Research Facility. Tell them Robert Wilson recommended you. Follow the rules they give you. All of them. I'll find you once you're inside. P.S. Delete this immediately. Robert Wilson? I didn't know any Robert Wilson. The email address matched Jake's initials and birth year, but that could be coincidence. Groom Lake Research Facility. That's what insiders call Area 51. A place so secretive that the government denied its existence until 2013. Was this some sick joke? I almost deleted it, but something stopped me. A memory surfaced. Jake, 6 months before his death, talking excitedly about strange lights he'd filmed near Groom Lake. How the footage had mysteriously corrupted after upload. How a black SUV had followed him for days afterward. "They got something out there, Danny," he'd said, eyes electric with excitement. Something that shouldn't exist. I'd laughed it off as conspiracy nonsense. But maybe the job listing was real. Security guard, night shift, Groom Lake Research Facility. The pay was absurd, $120,000 annually for what appeared to be basic security work. The requirements were minimal: military or law enforcement background, I had neither. Clean record, I had that. US citizenship, and willingness to submit to extensive background checks and specialized training protocols. I applied that morning, using my aerospace background as a selling point. By afternoon, I had an interview. By evening, an offer contingent on accepting strict operational guidelines and signing yet more NDAs. Something wasn't right, but I didn't care. If there was even a chance of learning what happened to Jake, I'd walk through fire. 2 days later, I stood at the employee entrance of Area 51, staring at a concrete bunker in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. A severe-looking man in a black suit handed me a sealed envelope. "Daniel Reed?" he said, voice flat as the desert stretching behind him. "Welcome to Groom Lake. Inside this envelope are your operational rules. Memorize them. Your life depends on it." I took the envelope, my mouth suddenly dry. What exactly am I guarding here? The man's expression didn't change. "The future, Mr. Reed, and the past. Your shift starts in 30 minutes. The envelope contained a laminated card with 10 rules printed in stark red text against a black background. At the top was a header: Black Sky Protocol, Night Security Personnel. I read through them as I was escorted deeper into the facility by a silent guard who looked like he could bench press a truck. Rule 1. Remain in the security office between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. except during mandated patrol rounds. Rule 2. Patrol rounds occur at 11 p.m. 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and 5 a.m. Each patrol must be completed within 15 minutes. No exceptions. Rule 3. During patrol, follow the green line on the floor. Do not deviate from this path for any reason. Rule 4. If lights flicker more than 3 times in succession, return to the security office immediately. Rule 5. If you hear your name called, do not respond. Continue your patrol or return to the security office if outside patrol hours. Rule 6. Never look at the sky through windows or skylights between 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. Rule 7. If any researcher approaches you wearing a blue badge after midnight, do not engage in conversation. Notify Central Security via radio immediately. Rule 8. In case of power failure, remain where you are. Do not use flashlights or other illumination devices. Rule 9. If you see movement in peripheral vision while patrolling Sector 7, do not turn to look directly at it. Rule 10. If the temperature drops suddenly or you feel a pressure change in your ears, close your eyes and count backward from 20 before proceeding. These seem excessive for security work, I said, trying to sound casual as I memorized them. My escort remained silent until we reached a windowless room with security operations stenciled on the door. Mr. Wallace will handle your orientation, he said, the first words he'd spoken. He punched a code into the keypad and the heavy door slid open. Inside, a man with salt and pepper hair sat behind a desk, reviewing camera feeds on 6 monitors. When he looked up, I was struck by how normal he seemed. Kind eyes, laugh lines, a coffee stain on his button-down shirt. Daniel Reed, he said, standing to shake my hand. Frank Wallace, head of night security. Welcome to the most boring job you'll ever have, if you follow the rules. About those, I started, holding up the card. He gestured for me to sit. Yeah, I know how they sound, but Groom Lake has unique security concerns. Like what? Like testing classified aerial technology that doesn't officially exist. He leaned back, among other things. For the next 20 minutes, Frank walked me through standard operating procedures, how to log events, use the radio system, file reports, normal security stuff. Then he addressed the elephant in the room. The rules aren't suggestions, Daniel. They're survival protocols developed after incidents I'm not at liberty to discuss. Has something happened to guards who didn't follow them? Frank's expression tightened. Let's just say turnover in this position used to be high. Now we're more selective in our hiring and clearer about protocols. But what am I actually guarding against? Trespassers? He chuckled without humor. Trespassers are the least of our concerns. Your job is ensuring nothing gets out that shouldn't. A chill crept up my spine. What exactly do you mean by nothing? Frank checked his watch. It's 9:45. Your shift starts in 15 minutes. I'll walk you through your first patrol, then you're on your own. As we left the office, I tried a different approach. I had a brother who crashed his plane near here, Jake Reed. Would have been about 2 years ago. Frank's stride faltered almost imperceptibly. The name doesn't ring a bell. Military said it was a restricted airspace violation. But Jake knew better. Lots of amateur pilots think they know better. His voice was carefully neutral. That's why we have the no-fly zone. We approached a security station with lockers, and Frank handed me a uniform, radio, tablet, and keycard. No weapon? I asked, surprised. Weapons aren't useful against our primary concerns. He tapped the rule card in my hand. These are your weapons. Memorize them. After changing, Frank led me through a labyrinthine series of corridors that all looked identical. White walls, numbered doors, security cameras every 20 feet. We passed researchers in lab coats who barely acknowledged us, their faces tired and drawn. This is the green line, Frank said, pointing to a fluorescent stripe running along the floor. Your patrol route. Sector 1 through 7, in that order. Sensor checkpoints at each section require keycard verification to prove you completed the route. At 10 p.m. sharp, my first shift officially began. Frank accompanied me on the initial patrol, pointing out areas of concern. Most doors were unmarked except for numbers and security clearance indicators. "What's behind these?" I asked, gesturing to a set of doors marked with red triangles. "Above your pay grade," Frank replied. "And mine. Never try to access any red-marked area. That's not on your card, but consider it Rule 0. As we rounded a corner into Sector 7, Frank lowered his voice. "This is where Rule 9 applies most. Keep your eyes forward." Sector 7 was different, darker, with overhead lights spaced further apart. The air felt heavier, charged somehow. As we walked, I noticed what looked like observatory domes built into the ceiling. "Skylights?" I asked. "Observation points," Frank corrected, "for observing behavior under specific atmospheric conditions." "Behavior of what?" Frank ignored the question. "Remember Rule 6, never look up through those between midnight and 4 a.m. As we completed the patrol and returned to the security office, Frank left me with final instructions. "The night shift is usually quiet. Keep the cameras cycling, log any anomalies in the system, and follow your patrol schedule precisely. The tablet will alert you when it's time." At the door, he paused. "One last thing. Sometimes new employees report unusual experiences, disorientation, vivid dreams, hearing things. It's just the desert air and underground ventilation playing tricks. Nothing to report or worry about." With that reassurance that absolutely didn't reassure me, Frank left. I was alone in the security office, surrounded by monitors showing empty corridors and laboratories, with nothing but a set of cryptic rules and the memory of my brother's crash to keep me company. And 8 long hours of night shift ahead. The minutes crawled by like hours. I spent the time between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. studying the facility layout on my tablet and memorizing the rules. Something about Rule 5 and Rule 6 nagged at me. Why would someone call my name in an almost empty facility? And what was so dangerous about looking at the sky? At 11 p.m. sharp, my tablet chimed. Time for patrol. The corridors were eerily silent as I followed the green line. The only sounds were the soft hum of ventilation and my footsteps echoing against concrete. I scanned my keycard at each checkpoint, marking my progress through sectors 1 through 6 without incident. Then I entered Sector 7. The atmosphere changed immediately. The air felt heavier, like wading through invisible molasses. My ears popped as if the air pressure had shifted. I remembered Rule 10 and stopped, counting backward from 20 before proceeding. As I walked, something flickered at the edge of my vision. A dark, fluid movement like a shadow slipping between light fixtures. Rule 9. Don't look directly at peripheral movement in Sector 7. I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the green line while sweat beaded on my forehead. The movement persisted, darting just out of direct sight as I hurried through my checkpoint scan. Something about it felt intelligent, curious. I sensed it watching me, assessing me. I made it back to the security office by 11:14, 1 minute under the required 15. My heart was hammering. What the hell had I just experienced? I cycled through camera feeds, focusing on Sector 7. Nothing unusual appeared on the monitors, just empty corridors. Either the cameras couldn't pick up whatever I'd sensed, or I was already succumbing to the unusual experiences Frank had mentioned. At 12:30 a.m., I noticed something on camera 14. A researcher with a blue badge was working late in one of the labs, hunched over equipment I didn't recognize. Something about his movements seemed off, jerky, almost mechanical. I remembered Rule 7. Don't engage with blue-badged researchers after midnight. At 12:47, the lights in the security office flickered once, twice. I held my breath, counting. The third flicker never came, just a power fluctuation then. The 1 a.m. patrol was uneventful until I reached Sector 5. As I scanned my keycard at the checkpoint, A voice called out from an adjoining corridor. "Daniel, is that you?" It was Jake's voice. My brother's voice. Rule 5. If you hear your name called, do not respond. I froze, my body warring between instinct and instruction. It was Jake's voice, exactly as I remembered it. "Danny, I need help. Please." My throat constricted. I wanted desperately to answer, to run toward that beloved voice. But Frank's warning echoed in my mind. The rules aren't suggestions, Daniel. They're survival protocols. I forced myself forward, continuing my patrol with mechanical steps, fighting against every fraternal instinct I possessed. "Why won't you help me, Danny?" The voice changed, a hint of something wrong creeping in, a hollow quality that wasn't my brother at all. I completed the patrol and hurried back to the security office, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely log the completed round in the system. At 2:36 a.m., the blue-badged researcher from Camera 14 appeared in the corridor outside the security office. He stood perfectly still, staring at the door. His badge identified him as Dr. Howard Lawrence. His face was expressionless, eyes unnaturally wide. He made no attempt to enter, just stood watching until 2:52 when he abruptly turned and walked away with that same jerky gait. I wanted to call Frank, to demand explanations, but something told me that would end my chances of discovering what happened to Jake. Instead, I documented everything in my personal notes on my phone, hiding it whenever the door opened. The 3 a.m. patrol brought new strangeness. As I entered Sector 4, I noticed the temperature had dropped dramatically. My breath fogged in front of me, and the familiar pressure change made my ears pop. Following Rule 10, I closed my eyes and counted backward from 20. When I opened them, something had changed. The corridor looked the same, but felt different, older somehow. The paint seemed weathered, the floor tiles cracked in places I hadn't noticed before. And there was a door that shouldn't exist according to my facility map, a simple wooden door with Project Blackbird, 1989 stenciled in faded letters. Curiosity warred with caution. The door wasn't marked with a red triangle, but it wasn't on my patrol route either. As I hesitated, I heard the faint sound of helicopter rotors from beyond the door, followed by urgent voices. "Subject is destabilizing. Containment protocols failing. Get Langley on the line. Tell him it's happening again. Evacuate all non-essential personnel immediately." Then silence. The temperature normalized, and when I blinked, the door was gone. Just smooth wall where it had been moments before. I hurried through the rest of my patrol, pulse racing. What had I just experienced? A hallucination? Some kind of temporal anomaly? The 5 a.m. patrol passed without incident, though I found myself constantly checking for the mysterious door in Sector 4. It never reappeared. As 6 a.m. approached, Frank returned, looking fresh despite the early hour. "How was your first night?" he asked, scanning my log entries. "Quiet," I lied. "Just like you said." He studied my face. "No unusual experiences?" "Nothing to report." The lights flickered twice in sequence around midnight. Rule 4 says to worry if it happens 3 times. "Good, you're paying attention." He seemed satisfied. "Anything else?" I thought about Jake's voice, the blue-badged researcher, the impossible door. "Nothing worth mentioning." Frank nodded. "That's usually the right answer around here. Go get some rest. You'll need it." As I changed out of my uniform, I found a folded piece of paper in my locker that hadn't been there before. "Not all rules protect you. Some protect them. Meet me at the Desert View Motel, room 17, 3 p.m. Come alone. R.W. Robert Wilson," the name from the email. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly pocketed the note and left the facility, mind reeling with questions. The harsh desert sun felt surreal after a night in the fluorescent underworld of Groom Lake. As I drove toward my temporary housing in Rachel, Nevada, I passed a roadside memorial I hadn't noticed on the way in. A small wooden cross with weathered photos attached. I slowed down, then stopped completely when I recognized one of the faces. Jake. My brother's smiling face was among a dozen others on what appeared to be a memorial for aerial incidents. Next to his photo was a date, exactly 2 years ago. There were other faces too, men and women spanning decades. The oldest photo looked like it was from the 1960s. All plane crash victims? As I stood there, an old pickup truck pulled alongside. The driver, an elderly man with skin like tanned leather, called out through an open window. "You new at Groom Lake?" I nodded, uncertain whether I should be talking to locals. "Thought so. You got that look." He gestured at the memorial. "They don't like to talk about this in orientation, do they?" "What happened to these people?" I asked. The old man spat tobacco juice into the dust. "What always happens when people fly too close to the truth around here? They disappear." He drove off, leaving me standing at the memorial, the desert wind whipping dust around my ankles and a cold certainty forming in my gut. Jake hadn't accidentally violated restricted airspace. He'd seen something he wasn't supposed to, and it had cost him his life. And now I was working for the people who had killed him. I couldn't sleep. Even with blackout curtains, the desert sun pierced through every crack in my rented studio apartment. I lay in bed, replaying the night's events and staring at the note. Who was RW, and how had he slipped it into my locker? I checked my watch. 10:42 a.m. Still hours before the meeting. I dragged myself to the shower, letting scalding water wash away the night's chill that seemed embedded in my bones. Under the spray, I tried to make sense of what I'd experienced. The voice that sounded like Jake. The disappearing door from 1989. The blue-badged researcher with his unnatural movements. All of it felt connected to Jake's crash. But how? To kill time and clear my head, I drove into Rachel, a town so small it barely qualified for the name. One diner, one motel, one gas station, and a gift shop selling alien merchandise to tourists. The little alien diner was nearly empty when I walked in, just a couple of truckers and a table of European tourists, murmuring excitedly about their planned Area 51 tour. I slid into a booth and ordered coffee and eggs from a tired-looking waitress. "You're new," she said, studying my face. Not a question. "That obvious?" "We don't get many new faces except tourists, and you don't look like a tourist." She set down my coffee. "Groom Lake?" I stiffened. "Just passing through." She snorted. "Sure, like all the other guys who are just passing through with that 1,000-yard stare. Word of advice? Whatever they tell you to do over there, do it exactly that way. We've buried enough people who didn't." Before I could respond, she moved on to another table. My appetite vanished, but I forced down the eggs and gulped the coffee, keeping my head down. As I paid my bill, I noticed a bulletin board near the register covered with missing persons flyers and old newspaper clippings. One headline from 1997 caught my eye. "Unexplained aerial phenomena coincide with increased military activity." Below it was a grainy photo of lights in the night sky. The Desert View Motel sat on the edge of town, a single-story relic from the 1970s, with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign. Room 17 was at the far end, partially obscured by an ice machine. I parked 2 rooms down, watching for several minutes before approaching. No unusual activity, no surveillance that I could detect. I knocked twice. The door opened immediately. The man who stood before me was in his 60s, tall and wiry, with close cropped grey hair and sharp blue eyes that assessed me clinically. He wore faded jeans and a flannel shirt, casual clothes that somehow looked wrong on him, like a uniform he wasn't used to wearing. "Daniel Reed," he said. "You look like your brother." He gestured me inside. "I'm Robert Wilson, though that's not the name I was born with." The room was Spartan, except for a folding table covered with maps, printouts, and a laptop. Heavy curtains blocked all natural light. A police scanner crackled quietly in the corner. "You knew Jake?" I asked, remaining near the door. "Not personally, but I've been tracking the incidents for years." He gestured to the wall where dozens of photos were pinned, connected by red string in the classic conspiracy theory style. I recognized Jake's face among them. "Your brother was the 27th. 27th what? Witness. Casualty. Evidence." Wilson sank into a chair. "How much do you know about what they're doing at Groom Lake?" "Testing experimental aircraft." I offered the official line. He laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "That's what they want everyone to think. Area 51 started that way in the 1950s. The U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird. Conventional aircraft pushed to unconventional limits." Wilson pulled up a chair for me, then sorted through his papers until he found what he was looking for. A satellite image of Groom Lake, with structures highlighted in different colors. But in 1989, everything changed. They started a new project, classified beyond black. No paper trail, no congressional oversight. They called it Project Blackbird, but it had nothing to do with the SR-71. The door from Sector 4. Project Blackbird, 1989. "What was it?" I asked, taking the seat. "They found something in the desert. Not a craft, but a component. Technology not from this world." I stiffened. "You're talking about aliens." "I'm talking about physics we don't understand." He pulled out another document, heavily redacted but with a government header still visible. "They've been trying to reverse engineer it for decades. A propulsion system that doesn't conform to conventional physics." "And you know this how?" "I was there. I worked on the project until 2003 when I realized what was happening and tried to shut it down." His expression darkened. "They discredited me, erased my credentials, nearly erased my existence. I've been watching from the shadows ever since." "What does this have to do with Jake?" Wilson opened his laptop and turned it toward me. On screen was drone footage of the Nevada desert. "This is what your brother captured 2 years ago. He was filming landscape footage for his channel and caught something he shouldn't have." He pressed play. The footage showed the desert from above, then panned toward a distant mountain range. Suddenly, the image distorted, rippling like heat waves over asphalt. In the distortion, something moved, too fast to track. The camera jolted, went sideways, then cut to static. "That's the official footage that was released," Wilson said. "Now watch this." He tapped a few keys, bringing up another video, similar but slightly longer. It showed the same sequence, but just before the distortion, something flashed across the sky. A dark, triangular shape moving at impossible speed. Then the distortion, the jolt, and static. "Jake sent me this before they got to him," Wilson said quietly. "He'd been investigating strange lights for months. We'd corresponded anonymously through forums. He didn't know what he'd captured, but I did. Which was a test of what they call the Black Sky Propulsion System, derived from the alien technology. It creates a localized distortion in space-time, essentially bending reality around the craft." I remembered the pressure changes, the door from 1989 appearing and disappearing, the temperature drop. "That's what the rules are about, aren't they, these distortions?" Wilson nodded grimly. "The effect isn't limited to physical space. It impacts perception, cognition, memory, even time itself. The rules exist because they've learned through trial and error what happens when humans encounter these anomalies." "And Jake?" "He flew into an active test zone. The distortion field destabilized his aircraft's electronics and structural integrity simultaneously. There was nothing left to find." Wilson's voice softened. "I'm sorry. I felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Why help me get the job?" "Because they're getting closer to stabilizing the technology, and when they do, they'll weaponize it. I need someone on the inside, the night shift specifically, because that's when they run the tests." "Tests of what?" "They're trying to create a permanent bridge, a stable corridor in space-time that would allow instantaneous transport anywhere on Earth or beyond. Imagine dropping troops or weapons anywhere without warning, untraceable, unstoppable. And the researcher I saw, Dr. Lawrence with the blue badge, Wilson's expression hardened. Blue badges aren't researchers, they're test subjects, volunteers who've been altered by exposure to the field. They use them to monitor the effects of prolonged contact. I felt cold. Altered how? Cognitively, neurologically. The field changes human perception, breaks down barriers between dimensions of reality. Prolonged exposure leads to integration. Integration with what? Whatever exists in the adjacent spaces the technology connects to. He pulled out another photo. Dr. Lawrence from decades ago, looking normal, young, human. They're not entirely themselves anymore, not entirely anything we'd recognize as human. The jerky movements, the too wide eyes. I shuddered. The rules, I said, putting it together. Rule 7 says not to talk to them after midnight. Because midnight to 4 a.m. is when the dimensional thinning is strongest, when our reality is most permeable. That's why Rule 6 exists too. Never look at the sky during those hours. What happens if you do? You might see what's really up there, and it might see you back. Wilson closed his laptop. The other rules are similar precautions. They've learned exactly how the human mind breaks when exposed to these phenomena. I thought about Jake's voice calling my name. Rule 5 is because the entities from the other side can mimic voices, memories. They're drawn to emotional connections. If you respond, you confirm the connection is accurate. Make it stronger. The implications were staggering. All this time, I'd thought Jake died because of government secrecy or military callousness. The reality was far worse. What do you need me to do? I asked. I need proof, documentation of the black sky tests that can't be denied or covered up. He handed me a modified phone. This will bypass their security protocols and capture data they can't detect. I need you to record the next test. How will I know when that is? The blue badge subjects always appear before a test. They're attuned to the field, and the system logs show a scheduled maintenance in Sector 7 tomorrow night at 2 a.m. Wilson's eyes locked with mine. That's when they'll do it. And after I get this proof? What then? I have contacts, journalists, congressmen who've been investigating black budget projects. With irrefutable evidence, they can shut it down. It sounded too simple. You've been trying for years. Why would it work now? Wilson hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. His arm was covered in a strange, shifting pattern, like a tattoo that wouldn't stay still. Except it wasn't ink. It was his skin, moving of its own accord. Because we're running out of time, he said quietly. The barrier between dimensions is breaking down. I was exposed during my last year at Groom Lake. The changes are accelerating. He rolled his sleeve back down. Whatever's on the other side is getting closer. As I left the motel room, Wilson called after me. One more thing. There's an 11th rule they don't tell new hires until they've proven themselves. I turned back. What is it? If you hear the Black Sky Protocol announced over the PA system, find shelter below ground level immediately. Don't try to escape. Don't try to help others. His expression was grim. Just pray you never hear those words. I drove back to my apartment in silence, Wilson's modified phone heavy in my pocket, and Jake's face in my mind. Whatever was happening at Groom Lake had taken my brother. Now I was walking straight into the same danger. But for the first time in 2 years, I had a purpose. Find the truth. Expose it. Make them pay for Jake. Tomorrow night, 2 a.m. I would be ready. I arrived for my second shift early, hoping to explore more of the facility before lockdown. The security badge granted me access to the employee cafeteria, where a few day shift workers were finishing late dinners. I grabbed coffee and found a corner table, observing. Most employees ate alone, focused on tablets or phones. No friendly chatter, no workplace camaraderie. The atmosphere felt oppressive, as if conversation might reveal classified information. One man stood out, mid-30s, buzz-cut, with a slight limp and darting eyes that constantly scanned the room. His security badge identified him as Trent Beckman, maintenance. Unlike the others, he seemed aware of his surroundings, hypervigilant. Military background, almost certainly. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he picked up his tray and approached. "You're the new night security," he said, sitting uninvited. Not a question. "Daniel Reed," I offered, extending my hand. He ignored it. "First piece of advice, don't fraternize. People notice. I'm just having coffee. There's no just anything here." His voice dropped. "Second piece of advice, whatever you think you know about this place, you don't. Whatever you think you're going to accomplish, you won't." My pulse quickened. "I'm not sure what you mean." 3 guys had your job in the past year. None lasted a month." He stood. "Frank's got a talent for hiring people with agendas. The last guy asked too many questions too, about flying accidents." He walked away, leaving his tray behind. Beneath it was a slip of paper with 3 words. "They're always listening." I pocketed it casually, finished my coffee, and headed to the security office. Frank was waiting, reviewing logs on the computer. "You're early," he noted. "Eager. Wanted to get a feel for the place in daylight." I hung up my jacket. "Quieter than I expected. People keep to themselves. Safer that way." He stood. "I've been instructed to expand your patrol route tonight. You'll be including Sublevel B in Sector 6. This wasn't part of Wilson's information. "Any particular reason?" "Orders from above. Nothing complicated. Just scan checkpoints along the yellow line instead of the green when you reach Sector 6. He handed me an updated facility map. "One more thing. Maintenance is scheduled for Sector 7 around 2 a.m. Avoid that area during your patrol." Exactly as Wilson had predicted. "Will do." After Frank left, I studied the new map. Sublevel B was a circular area beneath Sector 6, with only one entrance and exit. Why add it to my route the same night as the maintenance? It felt like deliberate misdirection, or a trap. I sent a text to the burner number Wilson had given me. Route changed. Sublevel B added. Trap? The reply came immediately. Coincidence. They're accelerating the timeline. Maintenance confirmed for 1:30 a.m. now. Get documentation if possible. Stay away from Sector 7 during test. At 10 p.m, I began my shift properly, checking cameras and familiarizing myself with the new route. At 10:47, I noticed Dr. Lawrence on camera, 17, already in Sector 5, earlier than the previous night. He stood motionless in a corridor, head tilted as if listening to something beyond human hearing. 2 more blue badge staff joined him over the next few minutes. All 3 remained eerily still. My 11 p.m. patrol proceeded normally until I reached Sector 5. The blue badged staff were gone from the corridor, but the air felt charged, like before a lightning strike. I completed my scan quickly, eager to move on. As I turned to continue, the lights flickered once, twice, 3 times. Rule 4. If lights flicker more than 3 times in succession, return to the security office immediately. I held my breath. The 4th flicker never came, but the warning was clear. Something was happening earlier than expected. Back in the security office, all cameras in Sector 5 and 7 showed static. I reported the outage through the system, but received an automated response. Scheduled maintenance in progress. Normal operations will resume at 0300. They were running the test early. At 12:14 a.m., all power in the facility flickered momentarily. The backup generators kicked in with a low hum, and the lights dimmed to emergency levels. Rule 8. In case of power failure, remain where you are. Do not use flashlights or other illumination devices. I stayed put, watching as cameras throughout the facility went offline one by one. Only the ones in nearby corridors remained active. At 12:30, my radio crackled to life. All security personnel, remain at your stations. The voice was unfamiliar, clipped. Repeat, remain at your stations until further notice. At 12:38, the temperature in the security office plummeted. My breath fogged in front of me. The pressure change made my ears pop painfully. Rule 10. If temperature drops suddenly or you feel a pressure change, close your eyes and count backward from 20. I closed my eyes, counting slowly. When I reached 0 and opened them, the office looked normal but felt wrong, the dimensions slightly off, the colours muted, and I wasn't alone. Dr. Lawrence stood in the corner, watching me with those two wide eyes. He hadn't come through the door. He was simply there, as if he'd stepped through from somewhere else. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, reaching for my radio. "Neither are you, Daniel Reed." His voice resonated strangely, as if multiple people were speaking in imperfect unison. "You seek knowledge of your brother's fate." I froze. "How do you know about Jake?" "We know many things from the spaces between." He moved closer, his movements still wrong, too fluid in some places, too jerky in others. "We have seen him, on the other side." My hand moved to Wilson's modified phone. "What other side?" "Where light bends differently, where time flows sideways." He cocked his head at an impossible angle. "They're opening the door wider tonight. They don't understand what waits beyond." "Who are you really?" I asked, activating the phone's recording function. His smile stretched too wide. "I am Howard Lawrence. I am also not. I am becoming, as all of you will, eventually." The temperature dropped further. Frost formed on the monitors. "Your brother saw the doorway opening," Lawrence continued. "His aircraft passed through the membrane during a test. Parts of him crossed over, parts remained here, scattered." Bile rose in my throat. "Is he alive?" "Life is a limited concept. He exists, in some form, as do all who breach the barrier." Lawrence's eyes flickered, revealing momentary darkness behind them. Not the darkness of empty sockets, but of infinite space. "They're using the wreckage of his plane. Metal touched by both sides conducts the energy better." The implications hit me like a physical blow. They'd salvaged Jake's crashed plane to enhance their alien technology. Suddenly, Lawrence's head snapped up, his attention drawn to something I couldn't perceive. "It's starting," he whispered. "They're creating a sustained aperture." The lights went out completely. In the darkness, I heard Lawrence moving closer. "Don't trust Wilson," he whispered, his breath cold against my ear. "He's not what he appears. None of us are, anymore." The emergency lights came on, bathing the room in red. Lawrence was gone. I checked the phone. It had recorded the entire conversation. But something about his warning nagged at me. Wilson had said the blue-badged subjects weren't entirely human anymore. Could I trust anything Lawrence said? My 1 a.m. patrol was cancelled due to the ongoing maintenance, but the system insisted I resume normal operations at 3 a.m. With nothing to do but wait, I reviewed the recording, trying to make sense of Lawrence's warnings. At 2:17 a.m., a new alert appeared on my tablet. "Security breach in Sector 7. All personnel implement containment protocols." Seconds later, an alarm blared throughout the facility, followed by an automated announcement. "Black Sky protocol initiated. This is not a drill. All personnel proceed to designated shelter areas immediately." The 11th rule. Wilson's warning echoed in my mind. If you hear the Black Sky protocol announced, find shelter below ground level immediately. Sublevel B. The emergency bunker they'd mysteriously added to my patrol route tonight. As I rushed from the security office, the corridor outside was chaos. Researchers running, alarms blaring. Through a window at the end of the hall, I saw something that stopped me cold. The night sky above the facility was changing. Stars blurred and shifted position as if something massive was bending light around it. A dark shape moved against the distortion, a triangular craft hovering silently above Sector 7. Black sky. The test had gone wrong. I ran towards Sublevel B, following the crowd of panicked personnel. As we descended the stairs, I felt the building shake. Not like an earthquake, more like reality itself was vibrating. The last thing I saw before the blast doors closed was Frank, standing calmly amid the chaos, making eye contact with me across the room. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned, as if he'd been expecting this all along. As the doors sealed with a pneumatic hiss, I knew with terrible certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Sublevel B was designed for exactly this scenario, a catastrophic failure of whatever they were testing. The circular bunker had thick concrete walls, multiple power generators, and enough supplies to last weeks. About 40 people had made it inside, mostly researchers and administrative staff. Many looked shaken but not surprised. Like Frank, they'd seen this coming. I found a spot along the wall, away from the others, and tried to make sense of what was happening. The modified phone in my pocket felt like a ticking bomb. Had it recorded what I saw outside? The craft, the distorting sky. A hand clamped on my shoulder, making me jump. "Easy," Frank said, sliding down the wall to sit beside me. "We're safe down here." "What the hell is happening up there?" I demanded, keeping my voice low. He studied me for a long moment. "You ever hear of Schrödinger's cat? The quantum physics thought experiment." He nodded. "The cat is both alive and dead until observed. That's what they're playing with up there. The space between states. Possibilities." He rubbed his face tiredly. "And sometimes, possibilities bite back. The Black Sky protocol. Wilson warned me about it." Frank's expression sharpened. "Robert Wilson contacted you." I realized my mistake too late. "I don't know any Wilson." "Don't bullshit me, Daniel." "Not now." He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "Wilson is dangerous. Not because he's wrong, but because he doesn't understand what he's become." "What do you mean?" "He was brilliant, the original architect of Project Blackbird back in '89. But after his exposure to the field, he changed. Started seeing connections that weren't there, became paranoid." Frank's voice dropped further. Or maybe he was seeing connections we couldn't. Either way, they pushed him out, made him a pariah. He showed me his arm, the way his skin moves. "That's just the surface manifestation," Frank said grimly. "The deeper changes are cognitive, perceptual. He perceives reality differently now, exists partially in multiple states. Like Lawrence, I thought. Existing in the spaces between." A tremor shook the bunker, dust raining from the ceiling. Several people cried out in fear. In the corner, a woman began praying quietly. "How bad is it?" I asked when the shaking subsided. "Bad. They were attempting a sustained aperture, keeping the door open longer than ever before. Something must have come through." His eyes met mine. "You should never have been here tonight. Your background check isn't even complete. Yet you added Sublevel B to my route." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I did. Call it insurance. I wanted to make sure you'd be near a shelter when it happened." I stared at him. "You knew?" "Not exactly when, but I knew it was coming. The cycle is accelerating. Each test brings us closer to the tipping point." He lowered his voice further. "Did Wilson tell you what they found in '89? An alien propulsion component. Frank laughed humorlessly. That's what they wanted everyone to think. Made it easier to compartmentalize the research, keep it in theoretical physics. The truth is more complex. Another tremor, stronger this time, the lights flickered ominously. They found a tear, Frank continued when the shaking stopped. A natural weakness in space-time. A place where the barrier between here and elsewhere was already thin. The component they recovered wasn't technology in the conventional sense. It was a piece of that other place, solidified in our reality. And they've been trying to replicate it, create artificial tears, control them, weaponize them. He shook his head. But you can't weaponize a hurricane. You can only stand in its path and pray. The bunker's intercom crackled to life. Status update, containment procedure, Delta 9 in progress. Estimated time to surface all clear 8 hours. Maintain shelter protocols. No details about what was happening above us. No explanation of what containment procedure Delta 9 involved. Frank checked his watch. We're going to be here a while. Try to get some rest. I need to know what happened to Jake, I insisted. Lawrence said parts of him crossed over, that they're using his plane wreckage in the experiments. Frank's expression softened. Your brother was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He caught a glimpse of something humans aren't meant to see, and it cost him everything. He hesitated. But Daniel, what Lawrence told you isn't entirely accurate. The blue badge subjects, their perception is altered. They see truth, but through a distorted lens. Then tell me the real truth. Another tremor rocked the bunker, this one lasting nearly 20 seconds. The lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness until the emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in dim red light. That's my cue, Frank said, standing. Security protocol requires a sweep of the shelter during power fluctuations. You're avoiding my question. We'll talk after the sweep, I promise. He moved away, checking the bunker's perimeter in the red glow. I used the opportunity to check Wilson's phone. The recording had captured everything, my conversation with Lawrence, the warning sirens, even a few seconds of the distorting sky. I quickly sent the file to the secure server Wilson had configured, then deleted all traces from the phone itself. As I finished, someone slid down the wall next to me. Not Frank, the maintenance worker from the cafeteria, Trent Beckman. He's not coming back, you know, Beckman whispered. Frank, he's going topside. I glanced around, realizing Frank had indeed disappeared. Why would he do that during an active protocol? Because he's one of the good ones. Beckman's eyes never stopped scanning the room. He's trying to contain it before the failsafe activates. What failsafe? The last resort. If the tear expands beyond containment parameters, they'll collapse the entire facility, bury it under half a mountain. My blood ran cold. With all of us still inside? Acceptable losses compared to what might happen if that doorway fully opens. His hand moved to his ankle, briefly revealing a concealed sidearm. Besides, most of us down here aren't making it out anyway. What do you mean? Instead of answering, he nodded toward a woman sitting alone in the corner. She hadn't moved or spoken since the lights went out. Watch her eyes, he whispered. In the red emergency lighting, her eyes reflected strangely, too bright, like an animal's in headlights. As I watched, she tilted her head at that same unnatural angle I'd seen in Lawrence. How many? I asked, suddenly aware of how vulnerable we were. At least 7 that I've counted, probably more. His voice was calm, detached, professional. When the lights went out, something came through with us. Blue-badged subjects? No, something wearing their skins. Beckman slowly unholstered his weapon, keeping it concealed against his leg. The real staff with blue badges are all in Sector 7, part of the experiment. These are replacements. Another tremor, lasting nearly 30 seconds. When it subsided, the woman in the corner stood with jerky, puppet-like movements. 2 others across the room did the same. No one else seemed to notice, all focused on their own fear. "Stay behind me," Beckman muttered. "When I move, head for the exit corridor. Don't look back." "We're locked in. Where would we go?" "There's a maintenance shaft that leads to Sector 4. Emergency egress point." He tensed as another figure stood, movements wrong in that distinctive way. "Frank showed it to me when I started. He shows all the security guys he thinks might need it someday." The woman approached another huddled group, moving with that terrible, broken grace. No one reacted until she was upon them. Then screams erupted as she grabbed a researcher by the throat, lifting him one-handed with impossible strength. Beckman moved instantly, weapon raised. "Federal agent, stand down!" The woman's head rotated towards him, too far past what human anatomy should allow. Her jaw unhinging as she dropped her victim and let out a sound no human throat could make. A high, metallic shriek that set my teeth on edge. Beckman fired twice, center mass. The woman jerked backward but didn't fall. Dark fluid, not quite blood, oozed from the wounds. Chaos erupted. People scrambled away from the woman, only to find themselves face to face with others who rose with the same broken movements. Beckman kept firing, creating a path toward a service door on the far side. "Move!" he shouted, shoving me forward as he reloaded. I ran, heart hammering. Behind me, screams and that terrible shrieking filled the air. The service door was marked maintenance only with a keypad lock. "The code!" I yelled as Beckman backed toward me, still firing. 1989, he shouted back. The year Project Blackbird started. The door from my first night. I punched in the numbers and the door clicked open, revealing a narrow utility corridor lit by strips of emergency lighting along the floor. Beckman followed me in, slamming the door shut and shooting the electronic lock to prevent anyone, or anything, from following. "What the fuck are those things?" I gasped as we moved quickly down the corridor. "The reason for Rule 7, he panted. "The blue badge subjects aren't just altered humans. They're vessels. Anchors that allow something else to maintain presence in our reality. And the real Lawrence, the other researchers, gone, consumed or transformed." He checked his weapon. "I've been investigating black budget physics projects for the Justice Department for 3 years, trying to shut this one down since I realized what they were doing. You're not maintenance. Deep cover. I was sent in after Wilson's claims gained traction with certain officials." He led me up a steep metal staircase. "I wasn't supposed to make contact with you, but when Frank added you to the patrol route, I knew something was happening tonight." We reached another door at the top of the stairs. Beckman punched in a different code and it opened to a dimly lit corridor I recognized as part of Sector 4. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To find Frank. He'll be in Sector 7 trying to initiate manual containment." Beckman checked his watch. "We have 28 minutes before the failsafe countdown becomes irreversible. And if we can't find him, then we get above ground and as far from this facility as possible." His expression hardened. "And hope whatever came through doesn't follow." We moved cautiously through the corridor. The emergency lights gave everything a hellish red glow. Tremors continued to rock the facility at irregular intervals, each one stronger than the last. As we approached a junction, Beckman suddenly froze, raising his fist in a military halt signal. He pointed to a security camera above us, its red recording light blinking steadily. "Still operational," he mouthed silently. If the cameras were working, someone was watching. Or something. Beckman gestured toward an alternate route, and we backtracked to find another path. As we turned a corner, we came face to face with Dr. Lawrence, or whatever was using his form. His eyes were completely black now, reflecting nothing. "Daniel Reed," he said, his voice resonating strangely. "You were told to remain in the shelter." Beckman raised his weapon. "Federal agent, on the ground, now." Lawrence's head tilted, bird-like. "Your designation is irrelevant. The aperture is stabilizing. The convergence has begun." "The convergence of what?" I demanded. Lawrence's face split in a too wide smile. "Realities. Dimensions. What you call ours and yours." His form seemed to shimmer, the edges blurring. Your brother understood at the end. He saw beyond the veil. Beckman fired without warning. The bullet passed straight through Lawrence as if he were made of smoke. Lawrence's arm shot out impossibly fast, grabbing Beckman by the throat and lifting him like a doll. "Your weapons cannot harm what doesn't fully exist in your dimension," Lawrence said conversationally. His other hand plunged into Beckman's chest, not breaking the skin but somehow passing through it, into him. Beckman screamed, his body contorting as Lawrence searched inside him, fingers moving beneath the skin like snakes. I stood frozen in horror, unable to help or even run. "The resonance is weak in this one," Lawrence commented, withdrawing his hand and dropping Beckman's twitching body to the floor. He turned his black eyes to me. "But you share DNA with one who has crossed over. The connection is stronger." He stepped toward me, hand outstretched. A gunshot rang out, then another. Lawrence jerked, black fluid spraying from his neck. Frank stood behind him, holding a strange-looking weapon, not a conventional firearm, but something that pulsed with blue energy. "Phase pistol," he explained, firing again. "Shifts the projectile partially out of phase with our reality. The only thing that hurts these bastards." Lawrence shrieked, body contorting impossibly as the specialized rounds tore through him. He collapsed, form shimmering and dissolving into a puddle of dark fluid that seemed to evaporate into the air itself. Frank rushed forward, checking Beckman, who lay gasping on the floor, his skin ashen. "He's been touched," Frank said grimly. "The integration has begun." "Can you help him?" I asked. "No. Once it starts, there's no stopping it." Frank looked at me. "But we can still stop the tear from widening. Come on." A final, violent tremor shook the facility, knocking us all to the ground. Overhead, the concrete ceiling cracked, dust and debris raining down. "Too late," Beckman whispered, blood trickling from his mouth. "The failsafe. It started." Frank checked a device on his wrist and cursed. 18 minutes to complete facility collapse. He grabbed my arm, pulling me up. "We need to move. Now." "Take this," Frank said, handing me Beckman's sidearm. "Won't stop them, but might slow them down." Beckman grabbed my wrist with surprising strength for a dying man. "The evidence," he gasped. "Did you send it?" I nodded. "It's done." "Good." His grip relaxed. "Now go. Tell them. Tell them what's really happening here." Frank tugged me away. "He's gone. Nothing we can do." As we hurried down the corridor, the facility's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. Facility. Purge protocol initiated. All sectors will be sequentially decommissioned. Evacuation routes are compromised. Repeat. Evacuation routes are compromised." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means we're fucked," Frank replied grimly. "Standard evacuation routes are flooded with hostiles. We need another way out." He checked his wrist device. 16 minutes until complete structural collapse." Another tremor, violent enough to crack the floor beneath us. Somewhere in the distance, metal screamed as it twisted and broke. "Why are you helping me?" I demanded as we navigated through increasingly damaged corridors. "You're part of this place, part of what killed Jake." "I've been trying to shut down Project Blackbird for years," Frank said, checking around a corner before motioning me forward. "From the inside, gathering evidence, sabotaging tests when I could. Beckman knew. We were working together, though from different angles." "Why not just go public?" "With what?" "Secret government facility creates tears in reality. Without proof, I'd be another conspiracy nut." He paused at a junction, consulting his device. "This way, Sector 7 is our only shot now." "Sector 7? That's the epicenter." "Exactly. The aperture itself is our escape route." I stopped cold. "You want us to go through that thing? Into whatever hellscape is on the other side?" "Not through it. Around it." Frank pulled me forward. The hangar adjacent to the test chamber has an emergency exit that leads to a surface elevator. If it's still operational, we can reach the surface before collapse. The entire facility shuddered continuously now, like a dying animal. Lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for seconds at a time. During one blackout, I felt something brush past me, cold and slick, moving too fast to identify. "They're hunting us," Frank whispered when the lights returned. "The entities. They sense our body heat, our electrical signatures." "What are they?" "We don't know exactly. Interdimensional beings, maybe. Or something that evolved in the space between realities. They perceive time differently, exist in multiple states simultaneously." He checked his weapon. "All we know for certain is they want in, and we opened the door." We reached a heavy blast door marked Sector 7, authorized personnel only. Frank placed his palm on a scanner, then entered a complex sequence on the keypad. "Won't your access be revoked during purge protocol?" I asked. "Normally, yes, but I installed a backdoor in the security system years ago. Insurance policy." The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. 11 minutes left." Beyond the door was destruction unlike anything I'd ever seen. The corridor ahead had been twisted like a wrung dishcloth, metal and concrete warped into impossible shapes. The laws of physics seemed to be breaking down. "Jesus," I breathed. "Reality fracturing," Frank explained, leading me carefully through the distorted passage. "The barrier between dimensions is thinnest here. Stay close, don't touch anything that looks wrong." Everything looked wrong. Shadows fell at impossible angles. Light bent around corners that shouldn't exist. The air itself seemed to shimmer with oily rainbows. As we navigated the twisted corridor, I saw movement ahead, a figure silhouetted against emergency lighting. My grip tightened on Beckman's gun. "Frank!" I warned. "I see him." Frank raised his phase pistol. The figure turned, and I nearly dropped my weapon in shock. It was Jake. My brother stood 20 feet away, looking exactly as he had the last time I saw him alive. Same confident stance, same easy smile, even wearing the same vintage concert t-shirt he'd favored. "Danny," he said, his voice achingly familiar. "You came." Frank grabbed my arm. "It's not him. Remember Rule 5. But this wasn't just a voice calling my name. This was Jake, standing right in front of me. "It's me, little brother," Jake said, taking a step closer. "Well, mostly me. Parts of me are elsewhere, but I'm still here." "Don't," Frank warned, but I shook off his hand. "Jake?" My voice cracked. "How?" "When my plane hit the distortion field, I was scattered. Atoms, consciousness, everything splintered across realities." He gestured around us. "I exist partly here, partly there, in the spaces between." Frank kept his weapon trained on Jake. "Not possible. Nothing human survives integration intact." Jake smiled sadly. "Who said I was still human?" He turned to me. "They used pieces of my plane to enhance their technology, Danny, because it was touched by both sides, and parts of me came along for the ride." I took a step toward him, but Frank yanked me back. 9 minutes, he hissed. "We need to move." "He's right," Jake said. "This place is coming down. The tear is expanding faster than they can contain it." "Come with us," I pleaded. Jake shook his head. "I can't exist fully in your reality anymore, but I can help you escape." He pointed down a branching corridor that twisted at a sickening angle. "That way leads to the hangar. The elevator is still operational." "Why should we trust you?" Frank demanded. Jake's form flickered momentarily, revealing something beneath, a lattice of light and shadow, complex beyond comprehension. "Because I'm still Jake, and I don't want my brother to die here." Another massive tremor rocked the facility. A support beam crashed down, narrowly missing us. 8 minutes, Frank said, making a decision. "Lead the way." Jake moved ahead of us, navigating the increasingly distorted corridors with ease. As we followed, I saw other figures in the shadows, some humanoid, others not. They moved with that same broken grace I'd seen in Lawrence and the others, watching us but not approaching. "They're afraid of him," Frank muttered, noticing my gaze. "Your brother, he's different from them." We reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions, all warped beyond recognition. Jake paused, head tilting as if listening. "Something's wrong," he said. "The hangar route is blocked. We need to go through the test chamber itself." Frank cursed. "The aperture is too unstable. We'd never survive direct exposure." "You would if I shield you," Jake said. "I exist in both states. I can create a buffer." "Jake, what are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying I can get you through, but there's a cost." His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something ancient and unknowable behind them. "I'll have to fully integrate with the field to stabilize it long enough for you to pass." "And what happens to you?" "I stop being Jake. I become something else. Completely." A violent explosion somewhere deep in the facility made the decision for us. The floor began to slant downward as structural supports failed. 7 minutes, Frank shouted over the cacophony of breaking metal and concrete. "We don't have a choice." Jake led us down a corridor so severely distorted it resembled a corkscrew. The air grew thick, resistant, like moving through water. Strange lights played across the walls, colors I had no names for, patterns that hurt to look at directly. We emerged into a massive circular chamber dominated by a swirling vortex of energy suspended between 2 enormous mechanical arrays. The aperture itself, a tear in reality, pulsing with power. Around it, equipment sparked and failed, control consoles exploded in cascades of sparks. And surrounding the aperture were bodies, researchers in protective suits, security personnel, all twisted and broken as if reality itself had rejected them. "They tried to close it manually," Frank said, horrified. "It killed them all." The aperture pulsed, expanding outward in rings of energy that distorted everything they touched. With each pulse, the tear grew visibly larger. 6 minutes, Frank checked his device. "The elevator's on the other side of the chamber," Jake turned to me. "This is as far as I go, Danny." "No," I protested. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." He smiled, that familiar crooked smile I'd missed for 2 years. "I died when my plane crashed. Whatever I am now is just an echo, but I can use what I've become to save you." He placed his hand on my shoulder, and I felt a strange tingling sensation spread through my body. "I'm creating a resonance field around you both," he explained. "It will let you pass near the aperture without being affected, but only for a few seconds." "Jake." My voice broke. "It's okay, little brother." His form flickered more violently now, less human with each fluctuation. "Find Wilson. The evidence you sent isn't enough. He has more, the complete history of Project Blackbird. Together, it might be enough to shut this down for good." "I will," I promised. "I'll make them pay for what they did to you." Jake shook his head. "Not revenge, Danny. Prevention. What's coming through that tear is just the beginning. If they keep pushing, if they successfully weaponize this technology..." He didn't need to finish. We'd all seen what even limited contact with the other side could do. 5 minutes, Frank warned. Jake's form was barely holding together now, light bleeding through the seams of his human appearance. "When I tell you to run, you run," he instructed. "Don't stop, don't look back, head straight for the elevator on the far side." "Jake, I know," he cut me off, smiling. "I love you too, Danny." With that, he turned and walked toward the aperture. As he approached, his human form dissolved completely, revealing that impossibly complex lattice of light and shadow I'd glimpsed earlier. He raised his arms, and the wild energy of the aperture seemed to respond, coalescing around him. "Now!" he shouted, his voice resonating with power. "Run! We ran, Frank leading the way around the perimeter of the chamber. The air rippled and distorted around us, but the protective resonance Jake had created held. Behind us, the aperture's chaotic energy focused into a narrow beam, channeled through Jake's transformed being. We reached the far side of the chamber where an industrial elevator stood, doors open. Frank shoved me inside, hitting the surface button. As the doors began to close, I looked back one last time. The chamber was bathed in blinding light, Jake at its center, no longer recognizable as human. The aperture pulsed once, twice, then began to shrink, collapsing inward. He was closing it, I realized, using his existence in both states to seal the tear. The elevator doors closed, cutting off my view. The car lurched upward, accelerating toward the surface as the facility continued to collapse around us. "He's sacrificing himself," I whispered. Frank nodded grimly. "To save everyone. The ultimate containment protocol." "Will it work? If anyone can do it, he can. Your brother was extraordinary, even before." Frank checked his device. 4 minutes to surface. If the shaft holds." A massive tremor shook the elevator, nearly knocking us off our feet. Metal screamed as the car scraped against the shaft walls. "Hold on!" Frank shouted. I gripped the handrail as the elevator accelerated beyond its safe speed, cables snapping above us as the automated emergency systems engaged. We were racing the collapse of an entire mountain with only my brother's sacrifice buying us time. The elevator's emergency brakes engaged with a deafening screech, showering us with sparks as metal ground against metal. I was thrown against the wall, my shoulder taking the brunt of the impact. Frank somehow kept his footing, bracing himself in the corner. 2 minutes, he shouted over the noise. "The shaft's collapsing behind us." I could feel it, the rumble of tons of concrete and steel giving way beneath us, a chain reaction of structural failure racing upward. The elevator shuddered violently, emergency lights flickering. Through a gap in the twisted doors, I caught glimpses of the shaft walls rushing by. Then suddenly, darkness gave way to pre-dawn sky as we emerged above ground. The elevator slowed, then stopped with a bone-jarring impact 20 feet short of the surface terminus. "End of the line," Frank said, forcing the damaged doors open wider. "We climb from here." He went first, scaling the maintenance ladder bolted to the shaft wall. I followed, muscles screaming with each rung. Below us, the abyss rumbled ominously. We emerged into a small, unmarked outbuilding half a mile from the main facility entrance. Through its single window, I could see the main complex, a sprawling collection of hangars and administration buildings that served as Area 51's public face. The real facility, the one housing Project Blackbird, lay beneath it, now collapsing in on itself. 1 minute, Frank said, checking his device. "We need distance. Now." We burst outside into the cold desert night. The sky was lightening in the east, false dawn breaking over the mountains. Frank pointed to a maintenance vehicle parked nearby, a rugged UTV with oversized tires. "Keys are under the seat," he said, limping toward it. "Standard emergency protocol." I jumped into the driver's seat, found the keys, and had the engine running before Frank could fully climb in beside me. I gunned it, tires throwing dust as we sped away from the outbuilding and the doomed facility. "Head for the ridge," Frank directed, pointing to a rocky outcropping about half a mile distant. "We need elevation and solid ground." I drove like a man possessed, navigating the rough terrain at speeds the vehicle wasn't designed for. Behind us, a low rumble grew to a thunderous roar. "There!" Frank shouted. "Stop here!" I slammed on the brakes at the base of the ridge. We scrambled out and climbed the rocky slope as fast as we could, reaching a vantage point just as the ground began to shake beneath our feet. What happened next defied easy description. The main facility didn't explode in the conventional sense. Instead, it seemed to implode, the buildings folding inward as the ground beneath them simply ceased to exist. A massive depression formed, growing wider by the second as the hangars, administration buildings, and security checkpoints slid into the void. The collapse radiated outward in concentric circles, consuming everything within the facility perimeter. Then came the flash, not the orange-yellow burst of conventional explosives, but a cold, blue-white pulse that seemed to invert reality for a split second. Everything negative became positive, light became shadow, up became down. The shockwave hit us moments later, knocking us flat against the ridge. When I could see again, the entire Groom Lake facility was gone, replaced by a massive crater nearly a mile across. No debris, no smoke, no fire, just absence where a top-secret military installation had stood minutes before. "Holy shit," I breathed. "Space-time rebound," Frank said, his voice hoarse. "When a tear is forcibly closed, it creates a localized collapse of the surrounding physical space." He stared at the crater. "Your brother did it. He sealed the aperture." At the center of the crater, a faint blue glow pulsed once, twice, then faded to nothing. Jake's final act, closing the door between worlds. "What happens now?" I asked. Frank struggled to his feet, wincing. "Now, we disappear before the cleanup crews arrive. They'll be here within the hour with a cover story about weapons testing gone wrong or underground gas pockets. And they'll be looking for survivors." "Who's they?" "The real power behind Project Blackbird, not the military, not any agency you've heard of." He scanned the horizon. "A shadow organization that operates beyond government oversight. They'll rebuild, start over somewhere else unless we stop them." The implications were staggering. "How do we do that?" "First, we find Wilson. If he's still alive, and if he still has the evidence he claimed." Frank checked his watch. "We need to move. My truck is hidden 5 miles east of here. If we're lucky, it's outside the search perimeter they'll establish." As the sky lightened, we made our way down the ridge and set off across the desert, keeping to rough terrain where we wouldn't leave obvious tracks. Frank moved with the purposeful efficiency of someone used to operating off-grid, checking our surroundings constantly. "You planned for this," I said as we walked. "This exact scenario." "I've had a go-bag and escape route prepared for 3 years," he admitted. "Ever since I understood what Project Blackbird really was, what it could do." "How did you get involved in the first place?" "Military intelligence. I was assigned to security at Groom Lake 15 years ago. Standard posting until I started noticing patterns. Personnel who changed too quickly. Test flights where the craft moved in ways that violated known physics." He navigated around a rock formation. "I started asking questions. The wrong people noticed. Rather than eliminate me, they promoted me, made me part of the inner circle. So you could be controlled. So I could be watched." He stopped to catch his breath, favoring his left leg. "I played along, earned their trust, all while documenting everything. Beckman found me 2 years ago. He'd been sent in after Wilson's claims gained traction in certain circles." "How does Wilson fit into all this?" "He was there at the beginning. Lead physicist when they found the tear in '89. The first to understand what it really was." Frank started walking again. "He's brilliant, but after his exposure to the field, his mind expanded. He began seeing connections no one else could, making intuitive leaps that seemed impossible." "But they forced him out." "Because he wanted to shut it down. He understood the danger before anyone else." Frank glanced at me. "The entities coming through the tear aren't the real threat, Daniel. The real threat is the tear itself. Each time they opened it, they weakened the barrier between realities. Not just at Groom Lake, but everywhere." "You're saying they could have destroyed reality itself? All of existence?" "Eventually, yes. The tears don't heal completely. Each one leaves a scar, a permanent weakening. Open enough of them, and the entire structure could unravel." The eastern sky was fully light now, the sun cresting the distant mountains. In the growing illumination, I spotted a weather-beaten pickup truck partially concealed beneath a camouflage tarp in a dry wash ahead. "There," Frank pointed. "Our ticket out of here." As we approached the truck, something caught my eye. A a flash of movement on a ridge to our north. I froze, pointing. "We're not alone," I whispered. Frank spotted it too, the unmistakable silhouette of a person watching us from the ridgeline, backlit by the rising sun. "Wilson," Frank said. "Has to be." The figure raised an arm, then disappeared behind the ridge. "That's the rendezvous signal," Frank explained, moving faster toward the truck. "He wants us to meet him. He must have been watching the facility, saw what happened." We reached the truck, and Frank retrieved a hidden key from the wheel well. The engine started on the first try, an older model with minimal electronics, harder to track. As we pulled onto a rough trail heading north, the first distant thump of helicopter rotors reached us from the south. "Right on schedule," Frank muttered, accelerating. "Black Hawks from Nellis. The cleanup has begun." We drove in silence for several miles, taking unmarked trails deeper into the desert wilderness. The helicopter sounds faded behind us. Eventually, we reached a narrow canyon where the trail ended at a natural stone arch. Frank parked the truck and killed the engine. "We go on foot from here, 1/2 mile to Wilson's bunker. He lives out here. When you believe interdimensional entities are hunting you, cities lose their appeal." We hiked through the canyon, climbing increasingly difficult terrain until we reached a cleverly disguised entrance set into the rock face, a steel door painted to match the surrounding stone. Frank knocked in a specific pattern. After a moment, the door opened. Robert Wilson stood in the entrance, looking both better and worse than when I'd last seen him. The shifting patterns beneath his skin had spread, covering most of his visible flesh now, but his eyes were clear and focused in a way they hadn't been before. "You made it," he said simply. "I wasn't sure you would." "The facility is gone," Frank reported. "The aperture closed." "I know. I felt it." Wilson stepped back, allowing us inside. "Your brother's sacrifice sent ripples through the fabric of reality. Even here I could sense it." The interior of Wilson's bunker was a stark contrast to his motel room. Clean, organized, with advanced equipment and monitors displaying data I couldn't begin to comprehend. One wall was dedicated to a massive corkboard covered with newspaper clippings, photographs, and handwritten notes spanning decades. "You sent the evidence?" Wilson asked me. I nodded. "Before everything went to hell." "Good. But it's not enough. Not on its own." He moved to a steel safe in the corner, entering a complex combination. From inside, he retrieved a hard drive and a thick manila folder. "This is everything. The complete history of Project Blackbird, from discovery to weaponization plans. Enough to end it permanently." "End what exactly?" I asked. "The facility is destroyed." Wilson exchanged glances with Frank. "The facility was just one node in a larger network. They have other sites, other tiers they're experimenting with. Smaller, more controlled, but just as dangerous." "How do you know this?" Wilson tapped his temple. "I see connections now, patterns in reality itself." He handed the hard drive and folder to Frank. "The damage I've suffered has its uses." Frank examined the materials. "This goes to Senator Harmon." Wilson nodded. "He's expecting you. His oversight committee has been building a case for years, but lacked definitive proof." "And after?" I asked. "What happens to us?" "We disappear," Frank said. "All of us. New identities, new lives, because they'll never stop hunting us once this goes public." "What about Jake?" I asked. "His body, his memory, there's nothing left." Wilson's expression softened. "Your brother exists now in a state beyond our comprehension. Not alive as we understand it, but not gone either. He's become part of the barrier itself, strengthening it." "That's supposed to make me feel better." "No," Wilson said simply. "But it's the truth. And after everything, I thought you deserved that much." Outside, the sun climbed higher over the desert, casting long shadows across the canyon floor. In the distance, more helicopters. Searching, cataloguing, erasing evidence of what had happened at Groom Lake. But they couldn't erase everything. Not the evidence we now possessed, not the memory of Jake's sacrifice, not the truth about what lay beyond our reality, waiting on the other side of tears we had no business creating. "We need to move," Frank said, checking his watch. "The senator is waiting in Las Vegas. If we leave now, we can be there by noon." Wilson handed me a small device the size of a key fob. "Take this. If it activates, if the patterns start moving, it means they've opened another major tear. It means we failed." I pocketed it, hoping I'd never see it activate. As we prepared to leave, I took one last look at the rising sun. Somewhere out there, beyond the thin barrier of reality, my brother continued to exist in some form, watching, waiting, protecting us all from what lay beyond. It would have to be enough. The small house on the Oregon coast was nothing special. Weathered clapboard siding, a slightly sloping roof, and windows that rattled when storms blew in from the Pacific. But it was mine, at least according to the documents that identified me as Michael Collins, retired software engineer and recent widower. David Lawrence, formerly Frank Wallace, lived 10 miles up the coast in a similar arrangement. Wilson had gone further north, disappearing into the wilds of Alaska with his increasingly non-human form. The hearings had been conducted behind closed doors. National security, they said. Senator Harmon's committee had been thorough, the evidence irrefutable. Project Blackbird was officially terminated, its remaining sites dismantled under international oversight. The cover story for Groom Lake, a catastrophic underground gas explosion, had made headlines for a week before fading into the background noise of a world that preferred comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. I still checked Wilson's device daily, still woke from nightmares where Jake called my name in that hollow voice that wasn't entirely his, still flinched when lights flickered more than twice in succession. Some habits die hard, others keep you alive. I stood on my small deck overlooking the churning Pacific, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands as I watched storm clouds gather on the horizon. The ocean reminded me of the aperture sometimes, vast, unknowable, hiding depths and currents beyond human comprehension, a barrier between worlds. My secure phone, the one that connected only to Lawrence and Wilson, buzzed in my pocket. A text from Lawrence. "TV, Channel 7, now." I hurried inside and turned on the television. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Unexplained aerial phenomenon reported over southwestern Utah. Multiple witnesses. The reporter stood in a small town I recognized immediately, St. George, Utah, less than 120 miles from where Groom Lake had been. Behind her, amateur footage showed a familiar sight. The sky rippling like heat waves, distorting everything beyond it. My blood ran cold. I grabbed Wilson's device from my bedside table. The patterns on its small screen were moving. The phone rang. Lawrence. "You seeing this?" he asked without preamble. "It's happening again," I said. "They didn't stop. They just went deeper underground. Senator Harmon called. There's a black site in the mountains north of St. George. No official record, no oversight. I thought we ended this. We ended the official program, not the people behind it." I stared at the television, where new footage showed military vehicles converging on the area. "What do we do?" "Wilson's already on his way south. Says he can feel the tear from Alaska." Lawrence paused. "He says it's different this time. Larger. More stable. They've figured out how to control it. Or something on the other side has..." His voice hardened. "We need to finish this. Permanently." I thought of Jake. Of his sacrifice. Had it been for nothing? I looked out the window at the gathering storm, feeling a strange resonance with the weather. Nature reflecting the turmoil building inside me. "I'll be ready in an hour," I said. After hanging up, I retrieved my go bag from the closet. Fake IDs, cash, weapons, Wilson's research. Always prepared, another habit that kept you alive. As I packed the car, the wind picked up, driving rain in sheets across the beach. Out over the water, lightning flickered. Once, twice, 3 times in succession. A warning, a sign. Rule 4. If lights flicker more than 3 times, return to safety immediately. But there was no safety anymore. Not while tears in reality existed. Not while the barrier between worlds grew thinner. I started the engine and headed south toward Utah. Toward the new tear. Toward the battle Jake had given everything to win. Some wars never truly end. Some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. And the rules? They only work until something rewrites them.